Hey folks, this is Dr. Emily Scherning with American Resiliency here with an up-to-date climate outlook for all of our friends in Tennessee. In the last projection series, Tennessee looked high change but within adaptation range. Let's see where we are with the updated projections. We will not get another update from the feds until at least 2028. Hopefully today's new information will help guide us until then. Here's the resources I'm going to use. If you want to double check anything that I'm saying or look for finer grained information, you're going to go to the resources tab at americanresiliency.org. You can get a link to the American Resiliency visualizations, which utilize publicly available data sets from the 5th National Climate Assessment, which you can scroll further down and find a link to that as well. One of the reasons you may like looking at county level data on the AR tools is that many of them visualize the difference between 1.5C and 2C over baseline. And as you can see from this information from the Copernicus Institute, the European Union's organization that looks at current climate change trends, we have been at or above 1.5C for quite a while now. We saw a big anomalous temperature jump in the beginning of 2023. June of 2024, we came in at 1.5C over baseline. July, we came in at 1.48C. I'll be keeping an eye out for the August numbers in the first week of September. We weren't expecting to be at 1.5C in 2024, but we are. And the NCA 5 predictions for what states would look like at 1.5C have proven pretty accurate. You can see on this figure here that the changes between 1.5C and 2C are big. It's time for us to get ready. It is very reasonable to be thinking about how your home is likely to change by the time we hit 2C of global warming. And I want you to feel empowered to do your own research and confirm everything I report without too much work on your end. At American Resiliency, we use the 5th National Climate Assessment publicly available data sets and figures because they represent the highest consensus climate science available. Your tax dollars paid for the development and review of this document, and you deserve meaningful access to the information. But as a matter of congressional mandate, there's no direct federal funding for communication to the public about the National Climate Assessment. That's why I founded American Resiliency. We're the only nonprofit focused on communicating this important information directly to the public, and we run on your donations. Let's check out your heat first. In the wet bulb risk tool here, Tennessee, you can see that you've always had a real difference between your east and your west, and that is going to be intensifying. We expect a longer, potentially dangerous hot season in many counties of Tennessee. If your color is changing between 1.5C and 2C, your risk level is increasing. We see at least another week of potentially dangerous heat heading to most of Tennessee, with some counties adding 2 weeks of potentially dangerous heat. There is more elevation protection in this western spur of Appalachia than we saw in the NCA 4, which is good news, but it's not as strong as the elevation protection we saw in, say, West Virginia. Let's look at this heat increase in terms of how many days we're adding over 95. So in this AR tool here, we add up all of the days over 95, 100, and 105 projected in the NCA 5 to let you see how long your total hot season extension is going to be. And we can see that over by Memphis, it's pretty long, with projected 36 additional days over 95 by 2C. And up here on the Cumberland Plateau, it's not so bad, looking at less than 5 days additional over 95 in Cumberland County. And if you explore the projections in the mountains there, it is a substantial improvement from previous projections for the mountainous parts of Tennessee in terms of summer preservation. However, the rest of Tennessee is picking up the heat the mountains might be putting down in this update. Most of the state looks to be gaining 20 to 30 days of additional days over 95. Memphis is looking at a 35-day hot season extension. Nashville, about 30, and Knoxville, about a 2-week hot season extension. Chattanooga is going to pick up an additional 20 days at or above 95. I went and looked at detailed heat layers in the NCA 5 Atlas because I feel like in Tennessee, it's important that we know how much that heat is coming in over 100 and how much is coming in over 105. You can check out that detailed county level information here, but it's a little clunky. It takes a while to pull up. So I'm going to read it off for you for some of our major cities in Tennessee. We've got good news for Knoxville in those detailed projections where none of the hot season extension is projected to come in over 105. I know that even a day over 95 is a hot day in Knoxville, but we're looking at a cap on that heat. You are looking at an additional 2 days of that 2-week hot season coming in over 100, but below 105. Chattanooga, you're also looking at a nice tight heat cap in the projections as well, with no days over 105, 4 days over 100. Nashville, one day of that extra hot month will come in at or above 105 in these projections, and 6 days will come in over 100. So that's a week of pretty intense heat in that about a month of additional heat you're looking at. And Memphis, unsurprisingly, you're looking at the most heat heading your way, with 10 days projected over 100, and just one of those days projected at or above 105. I feel like it is important that we take a larger view as we look at this challenging heat heading to the American Southeast and look at the national view of the days over 105 map. I want you to see that across the Southeast, although we are looking at a substantial hot season extension, it is very different in character than the hot season extension that we see in Texas and to the west. Phoenix, Arizona, for example, is looking at a 70-day hot season extension by 2C, twice as bad as anything we're expecting in Tennessee. And a full month of their additional hot season is coming in at or over 105. We can see that that dangerous extreme heat is also projected to impact substantial portions of California. Nobody's going to like seeing a hot season increase of a month projected coming at their home. However, I do think that it's important that we remember for the Southeast, when we're talking about these hot season changes, it's more about duration than intensity of the heat. Over to the Southwest, you're looking at increases in both duration and intensity. And in the Southeast, I know you can handle a little heat. I feel like we got to look at the nighttime heat, though. Anyone who grows anything in the Southeast knows that warm nights are a problem, that we need it to get below 70 for corn to set grain, for pods to fill, for many plants to grow in the heat. And if we look at this, unfortunately, the projected nighttime increases for Tennessee are pretty substantial in most of the populated areas. Virtually every city, all four that we're talking about in Tennessee, are looking at about an additional month of nights over 70. But we do see good conservation of cool nights on the Cumberland Plateau and over here on the edge by the Carolinas in the mountains. So that is good news for that forest health. That'll give your trees time to cool down and hopefully keep your wildfire danger relatively low. Again, this is a revision in a positive direction from the NCA 5. We used to see most of those western spurs of Appalachia projected not to hold nighttime cool. This is really fairly good news in the context of a difficult outlook. Memphis, Nashville, Chattanooga, and Knoxville, all of you are looking at about a month of additional nights over 70 there in figure 2.11, meaning that you are really going to need to think about air conditioning. I would be willing to bet that in Knoxville and in Chattanooga, you have older housing stock that does not have central air. This is an area that's important for public health in your cities where you're going to want to beef up your game to build resilience against heat. Thinking about cooling off, let's go back to figure 2.11 and look at projected loss of cold days. We see this fairly even dark peach color across the state, indicating 15 to 20 days less at or below freezing, with a couple additional days lost up there in the extreme northeast corner of the state. And that's good that we don't see a lot of height-based variation there. That's a good sign. Some places we see particularly strong loss of cold duration in the mountains. So your winter is going to be shorter. It's going to be 2.5 weeks shorter. Let's look at the change in cold intensity in figure 11.3. You can see here figure 11.3 from the NCA 5 looks at projected changes in plant hardiness zones, and it's enormous. So we're going to transition to a snip, but I wanted you to see where I got it from. And there we are, looking at just cold intensity change zoomed in on Tennessee. And Murfreesboro, I didn't want to say it until I saw this factor as well, but you are sticking out to me as the most relatively normal, lowest change population center in the state. You can see it quite clearly here in the cold intensity change. We're seeing about a 10-degree lift projected for your winter lows in Memphis, Knoxville, and Nashville, with Memphis winters unsurprisingly continuing to be the mildest winters of those three cities, but only a 5-degree lift for Murfreesboro. And we see some areas in the mountains, both on the edge of the Blue Ridge Mountains and to the north of the Cumberland Plateau in Tennessee, where there's only a 5-degree projected lift in winter lows. Those are really good additional signs for continued forest health in those parts of the mountains. We expect the best potential for landscape preservation in these parts of the mountains where there are relatively low amounts of winter change. Central Tennessee, I want to make sure you get this message. Outside of the big cities, over in what I may wrongly consider the horsey part of Tennessee, you don't look so bad. You're looking hotter in the summer with a 20-day hot season extension, shorter winter by a couple of weeks, 5-degree lift in winter lows. That could be a small enough change. You might be able to maintain decent landscape stability. And up in those higher elevation areas that I've highlighted as looking pretty low change, where you look for pretty low winter change and they're set up pretty good, I am hopeful for landscape stability there too. So far, Tennessee as a whole, you look like you're going to change your energy profile. You're going to have a little bit lower heating costs in the winter and a pretty big increase in cooling costs in the summer. Let's look at the projected changes to precipitation in your state to finish rounding out our picture here. Here in figure 210 from the NCA 5, we can see that the state is going to be split, where the most mountainous regions are going to get about 5% more rain, and then over to the west, about 10% more rain. This is not such bad news because you're going to need more rain to balance out the heat. And I'm happy that I see relatively lower total increases in rain in the mountains where deluge type rain can be particularly dangerous. In thinking about deluge type rain, that's why we need to look at this complicated figure here in 212. This is a figure where we can look for projections of extreme precipitation, that type of deluge type rain where you get like a foot of rain in a day. That's a bad day, no matter where you are. And this is looking like a concern, particularly in southeast Tennessee. Let's zoom in here at the annual projected daily maximum of precipitation. Chattanooga, you are looking at having some rainy days during the year. You are falling in this rain shadow that is going to send a lot of deluge type rain towards northern Alabama, where this regional pattern is centered. Chattanooga, I see your community is having a lot of resilience potential. I know that you care about the land around you. So I think it's very important that alongside your other relatively mild change factors, you take seriously this potential for increased deluge type rains. Zooming in on total precipitation for heaviest 1% of days, I want you to see that across the state of Tennessee, on your rainiest days, for much of the state, you could be looking at about 40% more rain. That's a lot more rain. I think it's worth noting that this area here that's sort of lower change, kind of in middle Tennessee, continues to be a little bit lower change, little bit less threat, but still worth building resilience. Across the state of Tennessee, resilience against deluge type rain that could drive flooding is going to be critical for maintaining your state's well-being. So it looks to me like we've got a couple of major challenges facing Tennessee. That hot season increase is no joke, but at least it's got a cap on it. And you are looking at potential deluge threats. You're going to need to design with an expectation that you're going to occasionally get whacked by really a lot of water. It's not as bad in the mountains, except in the southeastern corner, which is overall a relief. Deluge is a particularly deadly threat in the mountains that can take a house right off the foundation. But the threat of flooding rain is pretty serious across the state. There will be big storms. We need to get ready for them, or they will damage homes and infrastructure. This is a challenge, and it is a challenge where there are nature-based solutions. Wetlands restoration, leaning heavily on traditional southeastern cane wetlands restoration, could help a lot. We're going to be dealing with water in this outlook, and water needs a place to go. I'll tell you too, having too much water is a better problem than not having enough, as we see projected for the drying Southwest. Wetlands restoration could help Tennessee preserve the healthy groundwater reserves that really could make the state strong well into the future. Water will be an increasingly precious resource as we move into a warmer future, and Tennessee has put in the work. Tennessee has great water quality, rated number 10 in the nation, very high for the region. That water is power for your state. I want you to see one more thing. In figure 7.4 from the NCA 5 here, we do see elevated fire risk. In this modeled portion, this white doesn't mean no risk. It means it's not modeled, of Tennessee. But you should see it's a relatively light color. It's not an explosive fire risk like we see up in the Northwoods in Minnesota. We're talking about a 200% increase in what was a fairly unusual threat, a low threat of wildfire in the mountains. So in Tennessee right now, we're looking at big wildfire conditions potentially arising every few years, where you used to see them much more rarely, maybe every 20 years. And across the Southeast, with those big extensions in hot season duration and more of a tendency to drought than we used to have, That's all over. We expect more irregular weather patterns all over. We got to figure that all these pieces come together to mean a chance for increased wildfire. And responding to that risk is important for building resilience. Controlled burns are an increasingly important tool in the Southeast to build resilience against wildfire. We ought to be considering fire as a potential risk when we think about landscaping around our homes, especially if you lived in a forested area. You want a good margin around your home to help keep your home safe, and you want to be able to close up your home against embers. That's what the California DNR teaches, and they have learned some hard lessons about fire. Tennessee, overall, I would say this is a challenging but holdable outlook. If you're in Tennessee and you want to stay in Tennessee, there's territory worth holding here. The conditions are challenging enough. I wouldn't call the state a strong destination, although your water strength is considerable. To the west of the state, say in Memphis, there's getting to be too long a projected hot season increase for my taste. But I am not a Southerner, and I will leave it up to your judgment if that's a hot season duration that you would find tolerable. If you want a summer that feels more like Tennessee today as we approach 2C, I recommend you look up in West Virginia on the western side, or at southern Ohio, or at northern Kentucky. If we pull back up 11.3, you can see that's where your winter's going. Look at that second color, that darker peach color interspersed with lighter peach. Check it out. It's going into northern Kentucky, Ohio, and West Virginia. It's so surprising. The change level in Ohio is so high. I feel like if you're interested in moving somewhere for climate, but you want to be in a place that still has a southern feeling, it's surprising and good to know that Ohio is going full on Southern style right up to about Columbus. Columbus, Ohio is a city that is excited about more people coming and joining them in our changing climate future. And they're really working to put in the infrastructure. They're doing a nice job in Columbus. But if you want to stay home, if you want to build resilience in Tennessee, I wouldn't call you a fool. I tell people to get out if I think they should get out. And I would not say this is a get out level outlook. If you want to think about following the climate where you grew up, I hope I helped point you in the right direction. Don't forget, figure 11.3 is a great figure for if you're thinking about moving a little north, but you don't want to be too cold in the winter. That'll help you know where a warmer, milder winter is likely to shift. Tennessee, I'm wishing you all the best. I hope this was helpful to you, that you feel like you have more information that'll help you make decisions about your future. Stay or go, it's a good time now to think about how you're going to respond to change. Let's get ready. Folks, thanks for watching, and I want to thank everyone in the AR community for your contributions that are keeping this nonprofit going. If you want to donate, there's a link on the About page of our YouTube channel or on the top bar of our website, www.americanresiliency.org. I'm very grateful to our donors, to our volunteers, to everyone spreading the word online, and especially to everyone doing the work on the ground. Thanks for getting ready with me, and talk with you again soon.